You know what's crazy? I was sitting in a coffee shop last week and I overheard two guys talking about what they'd buy if they ever became millionaires. One guy says he'd get a Rolex. The other says he'd upgrade to a luxury SUV, maybe a Range Rover. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's literally the opposite of what actual millionaires do. Here's the thing, and this might blow your mind. The moment most people cross that seven-figure net worth threshold, they don't start buying more stuff. They start buying less. And not in the way you think. They don't become cheap. They don't suddenly start clipping coupons. They just develop this weird sixth sense about what's actually worth their money and what's basically financial quicksand disguised as a status symbol. My name is Zach, and I spend way too much time thinking about the purchasing habits of wealthy people. If you're someone who's working hard to build wealth but feels like you're constantly being pulled in 1,000 different directions by things you should buy to look successful, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, I've spent the last few years interviewing people who've crossed the $1 million net worth mark, and there's this fascinating pattern that keeps showing up. There are specific things, 12 of them, actually, that wealthy people almost universally stop buying once they hit that first million. And here's what most people don't realize. It's not because they can't afford these things. It's because making $1 million, though, teaches you something that no amount of financial advice can, the difference between spending money and wasting money. So today, we're going through all 12 of these things, and I'm going to show you the math and the psychology behind each one. Because understanding this isn't just interesting, it could literally accelerate your path to wealth by years, maybe even decades. Thing first, new luxury cars. Let's start with the big one, brand new luxury cars. Now you might be thinking, wait, Zach, I see rich people driving nice cars all the time. And you're right. But here's the key distinction. Truly wealthy people, people with seven-figure net worths, almost never buy brand new luxury vehicles. They either buy used luxury cars that are 2 to 3 years old, or they drive reliable cars that cost a fraction of what you'd expect. Here's the math that changed my perspective on this entirely. A brand new BMW 5 Series costs about $60,000. The moment you drive it off the lot, it loses roughly 20% of its value. That's $12,000 gone in literally minutes. Over the first 3 years, that car would depreciate about 50 to 60%. Meaning it'll be worth maybe $25,000 to $30,000. Now, if you're a millionaire with a net worth of $1.5 million, that $60,000 car represents 4% of your entire net worth. But here's what millionaires understand that broke people don't. That same $60,000, if invested in a basic index fund, averaging 10% annual returns, becomes about $212,000 in 20 years. You're not just spending $60,000. You're spending the future value of $60,000. A study from the Millionaire next door, which surveyed over 1,000 millionaires, found that 80% of millionaires have never spent more than $45,000 on a car in their entire lives. Warren Buffett, worth over $100 billion, drove a 2014 Cadillac XTS until just a few years ago. Here's what most people don't realize. The wealthy stop buying new luxury cars because they've learned that cars are tools, not investments. They get you from point A to point B. Once you make your first million, you've usually already driven the luxury car. You've already experienced it, and you realize it doesn't actually make you happier or more productive. It just makes you poorer every single month. Thing second, designer clothes for everyday wear. This one surprised me when I first noticed the pattern, but it makes total sense once you understand the psychology. Look, millionaires still buy nice clothes, but they stop buying designer clothes for everyday wear. They're not walking around in $800 Gucci t-shirts to go to the grocery store. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day. Mark Zuckerberg wears a gray t-shirt. Obama famously said he only wears blue or gray suits because he has too many other decisions to make. Here's the thing about designer clothes. You're paying a 300 to 500% markup for a logo. A basic white t-shirt from Target costs $8. A basic white t-shirt from Balenciaga costs $350. The actual quality difference may be $20 worth of better fabric and construction. The other $322 is purely branding. Let's say you spend an extra $3,000 per year on designer clothes versus high-quality regular clothes. Over 20 years, that's $60,000 invested at 10% annual returns. That becomes $172,000. You're literally trading a potential retirement fund for temporary validation from strangers who, honestly, aren't paying that much attention to you anyway. But here's where it gets really interesting. Millionaires understand something called decision fatigue. Research from Cornell University found that the average person makes about 35,000 decisions per day. Every single one of those decisions drains mental energy. When you stop caring about wearing the right designer outfit every day, you free up mental bandwidth for decisions that actually make you money. Now, you might be thinking, but Zach, don't you need to look successful to be successful? And look, yes, you should dress appropriately for your industry. But there's a massive difference between looking professional and looking like you're trying to prove something. Millionaires dress for function and appropriateness, not for Instagram. Thing third, extended warranties and insurance on everything. Here's something that's going to sound counterintuitive. Millionaires stop buying extended warranties on electronics, appliances, and most products. The reason? They understand expected value in self-insurance. Here's the math. Let's say you buy a Millionaire 200 laptop. The store offers you a 3-year extended warranty for $250. Sounds reasonable, right? Protection for only 20% extra? According to Consumer Reports, only about 15% of electronics require repairs during that extended warranty period, and the average repair cost is around $200. So the expected value of that warranty is actually 15% chance cocker $200 repair equal to $30. You're paying $250 for something worth $30 in expected value. The warranty companies aren't stupid. They've done the math, and they're making massive profits because most people never use the warranties. Once you have $1 million, here's what changes. You become your own insurance company. Instead of paying $250 for a warranty, you just accept the 15% risk that you might need to spend $200 on a repair. And if you do this across all your purchases, laptops, TVs, appliances, phones, you save thousands of dollars per year that you can invest instead. I talked to a millionaire who calculated that over his lifetime, he'd been offered about $45,000 worth of extended warranties on various products. He declined all of them and had only spent about $3,000 on actual repairs. That's a $42,000 difference. Invested over 30 years at 10% returns, that's over $700,000. Here's what most people don't realize. Insurance of any kind should only be purchased for catastrophic risks that would financially destroy you. A $200 laptop repair isn't catastrophic when you have $1.5 million in net worth. Medical bankruptcy? That's catastrophic at health insurance. Your house burning down? Catastrophic at homeowners insurance. Your phone screen cracking? That's just Tuesday. Pay cash and move on. Thing fourth, premium cable packages and multiple streaming services. This one's about subscription creep, and it's absolutely destroying people's ability to build wealth. The average American household now subscribes to 4.7 streaming services according to a 2023 Deloitte study. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max, Apple TV+, Paramount+, Peacock, Amazon Prime Video, the list goes on. Plus, many people still have cable packages on top of that. Add in Spotify, YouTube Premium, various app subscriptions, and cloud storage, and you're easily looking at $150 minus $250 per month. Here's the math that millionaires understand. $200 per month in subscriptions is $2,400 per year. Over 25 years, invested at 10% annual returns, that's $265,000. You're literally trading $250,000 for the ability to watch content you'll never have time to consume anyway. Once people hit that first million, they do a subscription audit. They realize they're paying for 3 different services that all have 80% of the same content. They cancel the premium cable package because they only watch about 5 channels anyway. They share family plans instead of everyone having individual subscriptions. They rotate services, subscribe to one for a month, binge the shows they want, cancel, and move to another. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't even really about the money for millionaires. It's about intentionality. When you're wealthy, you realize your time is actually more valuable than your money. And having 40 different entertainment options creates what psychologists call choice paralysis. You spend 30 minutes scrolling through Netflix trying to find something to watch, and that's 30 minutes you could have spent building a side business, learning a new skill, or just being present with your family. Look, I'm not saying never have entertainment subscriptions. I'm saying millionaires become ruthless about cutting things they're not actively using. They understand that every dollar spent is a dollar that can't compound. Thing fifth, expensive gym memberships they don't use. This one's personal for a lot of people, but it needs to be said. Millionaires stop paying for expensive gym memberships they barely use. According to a study by the International Health, Racquet and Sports Club Association, the average gym membership costs about $58 per month, and 67% of people with gym memberships never use them. That's $696 per year, Or $19,000 over 25 years for a service you're not using, invested at 10% returns. That's over $76,000. But here's the thing that changed once these people became millionaires. They realized they were buying the gym membership as a form of psychological permission. It's like saying, I'm the type of person who works out without actually being that person. They were buying an identity, not a service. Once you hit 7 figures, something shifts. You stop buying things to signal who you want to be and start actually becoming that person. If you work out, you work out. If you don't, you don't. But you stop paying hundreds of dollars per month for guilt and false identity. Now, you might be thinking, but Zach, what if I actually do use the gym? Great. But millionaires optimize this too. They negotiate annual memberships upfront for discounts. They use free alternatives like running outside, bodyweight exercises at home, or YouTube workout videos. They realize a $200 set of dumbbells and a pull-up bar provide 80% of the benefit of a $1,200 per year premium gym membership. Here's what most people don't realize. Wealthy people are ruthless about calculating cost per use. If you go to the gym 150 times per year at $58 per month, that's $464 per visit. Not terrible. But if you go 20 times per year, which is closer to average, that's $34.80 per visit. You could literally pay for drop-in classes at that rate and save money. Thing sixth, brand new electronics on release day. This is a big one that people don't talk about enough. Millionaires stop buying the latest iPhone, laptop, or gadget the day it comes out. Here's the pattern I've noticed. Broke people camp out overnight to buy the new iPhone for $1,200 on release day. Wealthy people buy last year's model for $600 6 months later. Same phone, half the price. Let's do the math on this one because it's pretty staggering. The average person upgrades their phone every 2 years and always buys the latest model at around $1,200. That's $600 per year on phones. A millionaire buys a 1-year-old flagship phone for $600 every 3 years. That's $200 per year. The difference is $400 per year. Over 40 years, a typical working career, that's $16,000. Invested at 10% annual returns, that becomes $195,000. You're trading nearly $200,000 in future wealth for the privilege of having a phone 6 months before everyone else. But here's where it gets really interesting. This principle applies to everything. TVs, laptops, cameras, gaming consoles, cars, any technology that depreciates rapidly. Millionaires have learned to let early adopters pay the innovation tax while they wait for prices to drop 30 to 50% within the first year. There's also a psychological component here that's fascinating. Early adopters of technology are essentially paying to beta test products. The first version of anything usually has bugs, recalls, or design flaws that get fixed in later iterations. By waiting, you not only save money, but you get a better, more refined product. Now, you might be thinking, but Zach, isn't technology important for productivity? Absolutely. But a 2-year-old laptop runs 95% as well as a brand new one for most tasks. Unless you're doing heavy video editing or 3D rendering, that $3,000 MacBook Pro does the same job as an $800 refurbished model from 2 years ago. Thing seventh, luxury experiences. They don't actually enjoy this one. Subtle, but it's huge. Millionaires stop spending money on expensive experiences just because they're supposed to enjoy them. Here's what I mean. Society tells us that expensive wine, luxury resorts, first-class flight, Michelin star restaurants, these are the things we should aspire to. And when people first start making serious money, they try all of them. But here's what happens. They realize they don't actually enjoy a lot of it. I interviewed a millionaire who told me he spent $400 on a bottle of wine at a fancy restaurant to celebrate a business deal. The truth? He couldn't tell the difference between that and a $40 bottle. He was paying for the idea of luxury, not the actual experience. Another person told me they flew first class internationally for years because that's what successful people do. Then one day they calculated they were spending an extra $3,000 per international trip for what amounted to a slightly bigger seat and free champagne. They realized they'd rather fly economy, save $3,000, and spend an extra 2 days at their destination in a nice hotel. Here's the math. Let's say you spend an extra $5,000 per year on luxury experiences you don't actually enjoy more than the cheaper alternatives. Over 20 years, that's $100,000. Invested at 10% returns, that's $315,000. But here's what most people don't realize. There's a concept in behavioral economics called hedonic adaptation. It means you quickly adapt to any level of luxury, and it becomes your new normal. That first-class seat feels amazing the first time. By the 10th time, it's just a seat. You're spending exponentially more money for an experience that provides diminishing marginal returns. Millionaires figure out what they actually value, not what Instagram says they should value. And they spend lavishly on those things while cutting everything else. One millionaire told me he doesn't care about cars, clothes, or fancy restaurants, but he spends $20,000 per year on experiences with his kids because that's what actually makes him happy. Another drives a 10-year-old Toyota but spends $50,000 per year on travel because seeing the world is his passion. The key is authenticity. Stop spending money to impress people. Start spending money on what genuinely improves your life. Thing 8, individual bottles of water and daily coffee runs. Okay, look, I know this one sounds cliche. Like every finance bro on the internet says skip the Starbucks latte, and it's become this annoying meme. But hear me out, because the math on this is actually insane, and millionaires take this seriously. Let's say you buy 1.5 latte every workday. That's $25 per week, $1,300 per year. Add in a $2 bottle of water every day instead of bringing a reusable one. That's another $520 per year. Total, $1,820 per year on beverages. Now here's the math that makes millionaires rethink this habit. $1,820 per year, invested over 30 years at 10% annual returns, becomes $300,000. You're literally drinking a potential retirement fund. But here's the thing, and this is where most people miss the point. It's not actually about the coffee. Millionaires don't stop drinking lattes because they can't afford them. They stop because the daily coffee run represents something bigger, mindless, habitual spending. According to a study by Bankrate, the average American spends about $18 per week on impulse purchases, coffee, snacks, random Amazon orders, convenience store runs. That's $936 per year. But here's what millionaires understand, that $18 per week isn't just costing you $936 this year. If that pattern continues for your entire working life, the opportunity cost is over $500,000 in lost investment returns. Once you hit your first million, you've learned to recognize these patterns. You realize that every small, repeated purchase compounds either in your bank account or in someone else's. You make coffee at home not because you're cheap, but because you understand compound interest works both ways. Money you don't spend is money that can compound for you instead of against you. Thing 9, full price anything. Here's something that shocked me when I started interviewing millionaires. They almost never pay full price for anything. And I'm not talking about being cheap or haggling aggressively. I'm talking about being strategic. Wealthy people understand that there's almost always a discount if you're patient and resourceful. They wait for sales. They use cashback credit cards strategically. They buy floor models. They negotiate. They use coupons without shame. There's a great example from a book called The Millionaire Mind by Thomas Stanley. He surveyed thousands of millionaires and found that 70% of them regularly use coupons when shopping for groceries. These aren't people who can't afford full price. They just refuse to waste money unnecessarily. Here's the math. Let's say you spend $50,000 per year on various purchases: clothes, electronics, home goods, travel, dining out, groceries. If you're strategic and save an average of just 15% by waiting for sales, using discounts, negotiating, and being patient, that's $7,500 per year. Over 25 years invested at 10% returns, that's over $817,000. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not just about the money saved. It's about the mindset shift. When you refuse to pay full price, you train yourself to be intentional with every purchase. You stop impulse buying. You plan ahead. You research, and that discipline spills over into every other area of your finances. Now, you might be thinking, but Zach, isn't my time worth more than hunting for deals? And look, yes, there's a balance. Millionaires aren't spending 4 hours clipping coupons to save $12, but they are spending 10 minutes setting up cashback apps that automatically give them 2 to 5% back on everything. They are waiting 2 months to buy something on Black Friday instead of buying it immediately. They are texting stop to subscriptions they don't use. It's about being intentional, not obsessive. Thing 10, storage units for stuff they don't use. This one's fascinating because it reveals something deeper. About the psychology of wealth, millionaires stop renting storage units for things they never use. According to the Self-Storage Association, there are about 50,000 storage facilities in the United States, and 1 in 10 American households rents a storage unit. The average cost is about $180 per month or $2,160 per year. Here's the math that's absolutely wild. $180 per month for 20 years, which is about how long the average person keeps a storage unit, is $43,200. Invested at 10% annual returns, that's $137,000. You're paying $137,000 in opportunity cost to store stuff you literally never use. But here's what millionaires understand that broke people don't. If you haven't used something in over a year, you don't need it. Storage units are basically museums for regret. They're filled with purchases you made that didn't pan out, gifts you felt guilty getting rid of, and just in case items for scenarios that never happen. Once you hit that first million, something clicks. You realize that stuff is a liability, not an asset. It costs money to store, money to insure, money to maintain, and mental energy to manage. Millionaires become ruthless about decluttering. They sell things they don't use. They donate. They throw away. They stop holding on to physical objects just in case. There's also a deeper principle here about sunk costs. Most people keep storage units because they've already spent money on the stuff inside, and getting rid of it feels like admitting they wasted money. But millionaires understand that sunk costs are irrelevant. The money's already gone. Continuing to pay $180 per month to avoid admitting a mistake is just throwing good money after bad. Here's what most people don't realize. Every physical object you own has a hidden cost. It takes up space. It requires mental attention. It needs to be cleaned, maintained, insured, and eventually disposed of. Millionaires calculate the total cost of ownership, not just the purchase price. Thing 11th. High interest debt to buy depreciating assets, okay? This one should be obvious, but it's shocking how many people don't get it until they've built real wealth. Millionaires stop using high interest debt credit cards, personal loans, payday loans to buy things that lose value. Here's the math that changed my entire perspective on this. Let's say you buy a $2,000 couch on a credit card with 18% APR, and you make minimum payments of $50 per month. It'll take you 62 months over 5 years to pay off that couch, and you'll pay $1,080 in interest. That $2,000 couch actually cost you $3,080. But here's where it gets insane. If instead of paying $50 per month toward that credit card debt, you invested that $50 per month at 10% annual returns for those same 62 months, you'd have $3,600. So the true cost of that couch isn't $3,080, it's $1,680 when you factor in opportunity cost. Once you become a millionaire, you've internalized this math at a visceral level. You physically cannot bring yourself to pay 18 to 25% interest on anything, because you understand that money working against you at 18% interest is exponentially more painful than money working for you at 10% returns. According to the Federal Reserve, the average American household with credit card debt carries a balance of about $7,000 at an average APR of 20%. That's $1,400 per year just in interest payments. Over 20 years, that's $28,000 in interest alone money. That could have been invested and grown to $160,000. But here's what most people don't realize. Credit card companies aren't in the business of lending you money. They're in the business of keeping you in debt. The entire system is designed to make minimum payments feel manageable while maximizing the amount of interest you pay over time. It's a trap, and millionaires refuse to participate. Now, you might be thinking, but Zach, what about good debt like mortgages? And look, yes, there's a difference between borrowing money at 3-7% to buy an appreciating asset like real estate and borrowing money at 20% to buy a couch. Millionaires understand leverage. They use low-interest debt strategically to build wealth, but they never ever use high-interest debt to buy depreciating assets. Thing 12th, the approval of people who don't pay their bills. All right, this last one isn't a physical product, but it's probably the most important thing on this list. Millionaires stop buying the approval of people who don't pay their bills. Here's what I mean. So much of our spending is driven by social pressure. We buy the nice car because we want our neighbors to think we're successful. We go to expensive restaurants because we want to impress dates. We buy designer clothes because we want to fit in with a certain social circle. We throw elaborate parties, take expensive vacations we post on Instagram, and upgrade our houses to keep up with our peers. But here's the thing millionaires realize. The people you're trying to impress are usually broke. They're not paying your mortgage. They're not funding your retirement. They're not there when you're stressed about money at 2 a.m. Their approval is worthless. There's a famous quote, I think it's from Dave Ramsey, that goes, "We buy things we don't need with money. We don't have to impress people we don't like." And that's exactly what millionaires stop doing once they hit 7 figures. Here's the math, and this one's hard to quantify precisely, but bear with me. Let's say you spend an extra $10,000 per year on status purchases, the nicer car, the designer clothes, the expensive dinners, the luxury vacations, purely to maintain a certain image. Over 30 years, that's $300,000. Invested at 10% annual returns, that becomes $1.64 million. You're literally trading financial independence for the temporary approval of people who won't remember you in 5 years. But here's what most people don't realize. True wealth is invisible. The millionaire next door doesn't look like a millionaire. They drive a 7-year-old Honda. They shop at Costco. They live in a modest house. They wear normal clothes, and they do this not because they're cheap, but because they've realized that looking rich and being rich are mutually exclusive for most people. Once you hit that first million, you stop caring what strangers think about your financial status. You stop trying to signal wealth because you actually have it. You realize that people who are genuinely wealthy don't need to prove it, and people who need to prove it usually aren't. Closing look, here's the bottom line. Making your first million teaches you something that no book, podcast, or YouTube video can fully convey. It teaches you that wealth isn't built by what you earn. It's built by what you keep and invest. Every single one of these 12 things represents a shift in mindset. It's a movement from trying to look successful to actually being successful. From buying things to impress others to buying things that genuinely improve your life. From short-term gratification to long-term wealth building. And here's the crazy part. You don't have to wait until you're a millionaire to adopt these principles. In fact, adopting them now is exactly how you become a millionaire faster. Every dollar you stop wasting on these things is a dollar that can compound for the next 20, 30, or 40 years. So here's what I want you to do. Go through these 12 items and identify which ones apply to you. Are you buying new luxury cars? Are you subscribed to 7 streaming services you barely use? Are you paying for a gym membership you haven't used in 6 months? Are you making financial decisions to impress people instead of building wealth? Pick just one and cut it this month. Take that money and invest it. In 30 years, that single decision could be worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you found this helpful, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you've hit the notification bell, because I'm breaking down the psychology and mathematics of wealth every single week. Drop a comment below and let me know which of these 12 you're going to cut first. I read every single comment and I want to hear your story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.